Hi, so it's the 31st of January 2020, Brexit Day. And in about just over 4 hours, the United Kingdom will formally leave the European Union after 47 years, and 10 prime ministers from Heath to Johnson. Um, I don't want to say huge deal in this video, and it's a strange thing, but I don't really have very strong emotions either way. I mean, given the importance of this, it's almost like anticlimax in the sense that this has been rumbling on for such a long time now, over 1,000 days, 3 years. It's really bitterly divided the country. It almost feels like, well, okay, that's it, we're out. Of course, technically, will have this transition period of, I believe it's 11 months. So we're still going to stay in some of the mechanisms until then. Nevertheless, today is significant because there's not going to be any more sort of amendments or bills or anything that would suggest that there's any chance of staying in. There'll be no more political wrangling, at least regarding England. You know, the Scottish Nationalists are definitely going to push for their agenda, but in that sense, I'm kind of relieved because from this day on, if things do go south, if things do go wrong, I think that these people, they can't blame the EU, and they can't blame Remainers. Although the term Remainer actually, I think there's many people who voted Remain, myself included, who are not necessarily Remainers. Euronews was covering this, and they were interviewing German passengers on a ferry. I believe it was from Harwich, if it was that crossing. And they were saying they were sad and they felt sorry for the UK, etc. But it also kind of made me think, well, there is a mentality among both those who are trying to campaign for a second referendum and frankly some of our European friends, mainland European friends, that just fails to understand the desire for sovereignty. Now, this is a big issue for me that I'm sympathetic to the Leave side. It's almost like how dare the British, you know, it's like caricaturing it as this lurch to nationalism simply because a lot of people see it as reclaiming sovereignty. So I think there is hyperbole on both sides. I think that there is some hyperbole from the Leave side in the sense of it seems sometimes they will blame everything on the EU. Um, I also think that they underestimate the many good things that have come from it. But that's irrelevant today because we're out. But I will say this: even I am getting a bit tired of the doom mongering from some on the Remain side. Some. It's very important that if we do truly move forward together, that we don't generalise, and that comes down to all of us, myself included. And if it's difficult because this is such an emotive subject, it gets people really worked up, and it can be easy to fall into that trap of tribalising people. But the reality is, people voted the way they did for a variety of reasons. So you can't pigeonhole 17 million people, and you can't pigeonhole 16 million people either. So just as it's wrong to kind of portray the Leave side as little Englanders, it's also wrong to portray the Remain side as elitist Europhiles or whatever other pejorative, Remainers, etc. Some of this pettiness and mudslinging really needs to stop, and that will include politicians and senior journalists like Piers Morgan. People like that need to be responsible in their language, because if they're using these sort of terms, all they're doing, they're not looking forward. All they're doing is ensuring that we remain divided. Now, I think Scotland is going to be a major issue because the Scottish National Party, they exist for independence. That's what they're all about. And, they are the biggest party in Scotland, and they will galvanise that sort of narrative of wanting to, oh, we can't be dragged out of the EU against our will, even though they disregard the 2014 UK referendum results. I mean, I've made this point many times. More Scots voted to stay in the UK in 2014 than stay in the EU in 2016. That's just a fact if you look at figures. And it is a bit nonsensical to demand to leave one union in order to stay in another union that's actually more recent. I mean, we've been in the EU since 1973. The British Union has been around since 1707, or depending how you look at it, if you go by the Union of the Crowns, 1603. So it's a very long time. And the sheer hatred that Scottish nationalists have for the United Kingdom is sad. It's pathetic, but it's also sad. I've never sat on the fence for that one. I'm dead set against Scottish independence, and I deeply resent the way these Scottish nationals think they speak for all Scots. Um, so I think that is going to be a major issue. So in that sense, today doesn't mean the end of tensions, because with the Scottish issue, that is going to. It may well be that another referendum is the only way to kind of go forward. I don't think. I think the British government's well within its right to say we had the referendum, the Scottish people made their choice. But I'm also starting to think, well, most Scots don't want independence. That's what most polls indicate. So if another referendum settled this, that really would shut the SNP up. It would take away their oxygen, which I would dearly like to see. Um, because to me, their whole agenda is negative. The SNP, I mean, Nicola Sturgeon is a skilled politician. I don't think she's stupid. I actually think she's a skilled politician. She'll say she wants friendship with the English, Welsh, and Northern Irish, and so on. But I do believe that beneath the surface there is a very, very ugly face to Scottish nationalism. And just for the record, they totally distorted what Lisa Nandy said in the Labour leadership contest. Lisa Nandy was not advocating that Scottish independence demonstrators be beaten with truncheons or anything of the sort. I believe that maybe her choice of words was a little bit reckless, but when she said, look, the Catalonia, I think all she was saying was that the Catalans tried unilateral independence and it didn't work. Even Nicola Sturgeon's accepted that. So I think that's all she was saying. But anyway, I digress. As far as I'm concerned, the United Kingdom is still a Western European country. So what I want to say to any of our European friends, mainland European friends watching this or looking at the situation, we're leaving the EU, we're not leaving Europe. And that to me is not just a slogan, it's a fact. The UK is a European country. Culturally, geopolitically, we are a European country. Yes, we're an island nation. I kind of see it a bit like Japan. Japan is an Asian country, but it's an island nation with a strong sense of identity, and sometimes feels isolated from the rest of Asia. I think it's actually somewhat similar with the UK, and we're both monarchies as well. Incidentally, the Prime Minister was in Sunderland today with his cabinet. I brought my camera along today just in case, on the off chance I'd run into BJ, but of course it was. He visited the Nissan, he visited the National Glass Centre. It was symbolic, of course, but Sunderland was the first city to declare the vote leave result, and it was a strong vote leave here. Um, so it's kind of symbolic. The actual location of the cabinet meeting was secret for obvious reasons. Um, so really, I don't have strong emotions on the ground that this was coming. It's not dramatic in that sense. It was coming. It was going to happen under Boris Johnson. It's happened. And in a sense, I'm sort of, one good thing about this is hopefully the Leave side will calm down a bit because things were getting very heated. I heard people, talking about Theresa May like she should be flung in the Tower of London and worse. So if it calms things down a little bit in that sense from the Leave side, I mean, what I would respectfully say to Leave people is, right, you've got your way now. You've got what you wanted. We're out. So whatever happens from this day on, please do not point fingers at the Remain side or the EU. You've got what you wanted. And I would say to fellow Remain people, look, I understand the concerns. We are going into the unknown. And we are British citizens. We have as much right as the 17 million people who voted Leave. But let's not be so cynical just for the sake of it. This may well present opportunities. Let's not write this off as a disaster before it's even happened. Because everything that's being said is speculation only, and experts can get it wrong. You can. Um, this is a great country. I love the United Kingdom. So we owe it to this country to have some optimism, to at least give it a chance. Sure, if the country breaks up, say, from Scottish independence, then this will just prove to be certainly one of the major causes. And it would be, well, the day that happens, I would, I don't know what I'll do, quite frankly. The day that happens, I would seriously contemplate emigrating because the United Kingdom would be gone, my country would be dead. But that hasn't happened, and this is a great country. And I would also say, if you're French or Irish or Spanish or Latvian or any of our other friends across the continent, this is not about being against Europe. It's not about saying we don't want to be part of the European family. It's about saying that there is a deep lack of trust in the EU as an institution. I personally do have issues with the EU. I don't think it particularly respects democracy. And there is a fundamental issue here. Sovereignty does matter. Sovereignty is not some sort of extreme position. It's simply an expression of nationhood that every country on the face of this earth has. I mean, you cannot tell me that there aren't people in France and Ireland and Latvia and the Czech Republic and Italy and so on that feel a strong sense of their national identity. That doesn't make them fanatical neo nationalists. Okay, that element exists. But ironically, one could argue that the rise in populism, as Farage rather crudely put it, it's popular, is precisely because the EU disregards this. The EU has failed to show that it respects individual sovereignty. And frankly, some Europhiles give this idea that they don't respect it either. The European Union will never be a country. Never. With the greatest will in the world. Even without Brexit, that wouldn't have happened. Because too many people, even people who support the EU, would be wary of that. I even suspect Emmanuel Macron and successive French presidents would never want to see a situation where there is a single homogenous Europe. I do think it is something to celebrate that this continent has seen sustained peace for half a century, longer than half a century. We are in many ways the most progressive, most peaceful region on earth. That's something to be proud of. I'm proud to be a European, and I am. I'm a Briton, but I'm also a European. But that doesn't mean that the United Kingdom expressing its sovereignty is the end of Western civilization. It doesn't mean that the United Kingdom is saying we don't want to be friends of Ireland or France or the Netherlands or any of our other closest neighbours. I firmly believe that we should be close. Now, Ursula von der Leyen said that we will be close, but it will never be as close as being a member. The obvious implication here is we can't get the perks of being a member. We cannot. We can't do that. I mean, one Eurosceptic MEP ridiculously complained that we were losing some of the some of the perks that we get with being in the EU, or perks is probably the wrong word, some of the arrangements that we get with being in the EU, but we're leaving. That's what they wanted. So the Leave side has to accept that. They can't, you can't join a club, a social club, and then say, oh, but they're not giving me free drinks anymore. And okay, that's a pretty crude example, but that is the other side of this. We cannot make demands to the EU from the EU now that we're out. The EU has to respect our sovereignty. And it would be a grave mistake if they. I mean, I'm quite reassured by the diplomatic language that's been used recently, like the British are always welcome back, etc. It hasn't been, for the most part, it hasn't been like the British are idiots have made the wrong mistake. It's a good thing they're not using that language because that would only make people angry, including a lot of people who voted Remain. So the EU needs to understand that this isn't 17 million hysterical nationalists who are, trying to create a little England. Many of those people are from all parts of the world. They're from all sorts of backgrounds. I mean, some of the strongest Leave advocates I know of are ethnic minority Britons. So this idea it's some sort of white nationalist thing is nonsense. Okay, some of that may come about from it, and I doubt there's any racists that voted Remain, but we can't crudely dismiss this in that way. I think that would be very misguided. And it isn't even a left right thing. I know of left wing people who are skeptical of the European Union and who support the Leave move. Anyway, we're out. We're out tonight. Yeah, we're staying in a lot of the arrangements through the transition period, but symbolically, we are out. So I do have some degree of sadness. Even Farage admitted that. He admitted a little twang of regret that he'd missed the drama of the EU. He dismissed Brussels as a dump now. I hope he was actually referring to the city as opposed to a kind of sweep it. I don't know. Actually, to be honest, Brussels isn't a very attractive city. I kind of digress here, but there's other Belgian cities that are far more attractive. But Brussels has a lot of brutalist architecture, and I don't know if that's what he was referring to. He did mention he liked Strasbourg, good family restaurants there. One thing I really hope doesn't happen is that there's a sort of collective punishment of the British. I would be quite offended and, well, not very happy if, for example, I went on holiday somewhere for a short break, somewhere in the European Union, and they kind of took this uptight attitude because I'm British. Oh, like you British have left our union. If anyone takes that attitude, that will not go down well because that will only reaffirm to British people, including people who were pro EU, that would only turn pro EU people against the EU. It would be a big mistake because it would look like it's bullying. It would look like it's arrogant. So what I say to the EU and to all our European friends is you need to respect this country as well. I think we need to reassure EU nationals in the UK. For example, I have a French friend in Scotland. I know she was very anxious about the situation. So it is very, very important that Johnson and his cabinet reassure EU nationals, and likewise, respective governments, particularly Spain, reassure our nationals. That's very important. And it's important that we work together where possible. Because this is a dangerous world we live in. I believe it is essential that we work with like-minded Western liberal democracies in a dangerous world. And there's a lot of things we can do together. And if that even means, for example, siding with our European neighbours over the United States in a particular issue, that's something we need to, support. I'm all for the special relationship with the United States, but we cannot rely on America. We also need to focus on the Commonwealth. I mean, I am all for closer ties to Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and other Commonwealth countries because that's natural. These are our cousins. This makes total sense to advocate very strong relations. This is a great country, and I have my concerns, but I'm being optimistic. I'm trying to be optimistic because I really don't see what's practical about doom mongering. I don't see what's practical about thinking, oh, we're going to implode tomorrow. That is not going to happen. I don't think this is all going to be smooth, and I think there will be things arise from this. And the Leave side, like I said, will need to take responsibility for that and not blame anyone else. But we're all British, and this has been one of the most testing times in our constitutional history. So I think we all have a responsibility to calm down a little bit and accept that I think the Leave side need to accept they're the winners. Don't gloat about it. You've got your way. Okay, let's hope it's a success. But don't dismiss your fellow citizens as remoaners simply because they have legitimate concerns. If they are remoaning, if they're demanding we stay in, fair enough. But simply expressing concerns is a democratic right. Um, and for the Remain side, they need to respect that this is just democracy. The mandate has been delivered. Okay, you can talk about how people were lied to. You can talk about how some of the people who voted Leave have passed away because they were older people. You could put it any other way, but in the end of the day, the majority won, and democracy's been delivered today. So this is not a tragedy. This is not a disaster. This is democracy in action. It might be misguided, but we'll just see. I just don't see the point of being overly negative. Um, I'm not dewy-eyed either. I do not think it's a utopia that some Brexiteers seem to think it will be, but at the same time, I'm not totally in despair. Because as far as I'm concerned, we are still European. We will still have close ties to the EU. And hopefully, this will be a wake up call for the EU to maybe reflect on some of its attitude over the years. And like I say to our European friends, as far as I'm concerned, you are our friends. This does not mean that we're suddenly saying, oh, we don't want to talk to the French or the Irish or any of our neighbours. It's simply saying this is an expression that we are a sovereign nation and we are acting on that. I mean, I've seen some attitudes from people in other countries that is frankly quite disrespectful to the British sovereignty. So let's just see what happens. It might be a disaster, but I don't think it will be. I think there'll be challenges. I'm cautiously optimistic, cautiously, because I really don't see what is practical about feeling any other way. I know there will be people who voted Remain who will be absolutely depressed tonight. Let's put things in context. The country is still here, and we are still going to have connections and diplomacy and trade with our European neighbours. It will be complicated in the beginning, inevitably, but it's in their interest, as well. We are the world's fifth biggest economy, so we're not a country that can be dismissed. And I think the government knows full well that we cannot dismiss our European neighbours either. So it's a mutual interest that we make this work. I'll leave it there, but let's go forward together. Let's just calm down a bit, stop calling each other names, and have adult discussion where there are disagreements, where there is uncertainty. But this is history today. I mean, the day itself may not be getting as much coverage as, for example, the coronavirus has been confirmed in Newcastle, so that was actually the headlines earlier, not Brexit. So it almost feels, like I say, like an anticlimax, like, well, this is it. That's it, after 3 years of wrangling. But that is it. I mean, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of Western civilization. It's not the end of Europe. Let's hope it's not the end of the United Kingdom. Thanks for watching.